Susan M. is a merchandising executive with 25 years experience in the corporate world. Im was most recently the VP of Product Development for Macy's and responsible for $340 million and a team of 20. Her favorite quote is, "Be the person you needed when you were younger," and she's committed to giving back to making an impact in the community through mentoring. So today at Lehman College, we are super excited to welcome Susan Im to present to us on public speaking and strategic communications. So Susan.
That's Suzette. Jonathan, if you could just go on to the next slide, and I can just tell everybody a little bit about myself. I'm a first-generation immigrant. I was born in South Korea, and we came to the United States when I was 9 years old. We grew up in Brooklyn, New York, and I'm a product of the public school system. I went to Brooklyn Tech High School, and I graduated from SUNY Albany with a degree in business administration. So I'm really glad to be here with you guys this evening. As I say to a lot of people, growing up, my parents had a small store, and a lot of their friends, as well as the people in our church community, all had small businesses. I didn't have anybody in our circle that worked in corporate America. So I had no mentors to really walk me through what that process looks like. My first job offer, my first job, salary negotiation, there was no one to help me through any of that. So that's why, to me, mentoring is really important. And I'm happy to be here with you to share some of my experience and some of my learnings along the way. Next slide, please. So as Suzette mentioned, I've been a part of Macy's for a while. I was there for about 15 years. And, it took me a while, I have to say. These are some of the companies that I've been a part of in my 25+ year journey. And it took me a while to really figure out the ins and outs of the workplace and how to be successful. As much as I didn't have a mentor, I had voices in my head. So I had voices telling me, oh, don't speak until you're spoken to. Keep your head down, work hard, respect your elders, respect your authority, don't rock the boat, don't cause any problems. And all of these voices in my head were really prohibiting me from playing full out at work. I was definitely not going to be one of those people who participated just to state the obvious. That's not me, and I actually hate that person. So I had to really figure out, how could I show my value in all of these meetings? So pretty soon I figured out that I really had to think about what it was that I wanted to say, and I had to be very intentional. So I prepared, and for every single meeting that I was a part of, or every single presentation that I had to give, I made sure that I didn't just state the facts or didn't just share what everybody else had in terms of the reports, but that I added value. I added context to it. I gave it a different reference. I had a point of view about what I was talking about. And pretty soon, people saw me as somebody who knew my business well and who was strategic and very thoughtful about what I had to say. And that really gave me confidence to go forward and to really continue to do that a little bit more. So I think that's one of the things that I really want you guys to take away from this is, the idea of how important communication is in the workplace. When you think about school, it's pretty clear what the expectations are, right? I mean, the workload might be a lot right now, but you guys know, as soon as the class starts, you get a syllabus, you know what the professor wants from you, you know when the exams are, when the papers are due, and what the expectations are for that. The workplace is not always as clear as that. It's a little bit more nuanced, so it's really kind of figuring out your voice. And why is that important? Macy's is a company that employs 140,000 people. So when you think about that, even in the executive ranks, there are thousands of us. So unless you're able to show people what you know and what you're about, how do they even know you for when promotions come up or when jobs are available? So that's why that part is really important. So I would say, if I want you guys to take anything away from this, is just to know that it's really important to be an effective communicator and to be able to participate in any and all opportunities that you have in the workplace. I think that's a very different transition from school to work. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is going to be a little interactive. Everyone has their chat button on the bottom of the screen. I want everyone to go on there and 1 or 2 words, just what is your story around public speaking? I'm going to give you a few seconds to write that in. I'm going to go and put in something myself. Come on, I don't see any chats coming through. Oh, there you go. Anxiety. Yep. Donna says it's her job. Maria's not a fan. Intimidating. So, you know, if you're like me, I mean, definitely a lot of us are nervous about public speaking. A lot of us are scared of public speaking. Some accounts say that up to 75% of the population lists public speaking as their #1 fear on top of everything else. So you're definitely not alone. And it's just something that we need to learn how to reframe. My story goes all the way back to middle school. I mean, I can remember it like it was yesterday. I had to do an oral presentation on teenage pregnancy. And at the time, that was like a big topic. And I remember going up there and I can still feel how I felt. My heart was beating 1,000 miles a minute. My mouth was dry. My face started to get hot. I was sweating. And I was up there and I had my notes in front of me and I just read through the presentation, never looked up once, my voice shaking the whole time, and I thought I was going to die. So at that point I said, you know what, I am terrible at this. I'm going to avoid this from now on. Some people are better at it than me, and I'm not doing it anymore. And obviously, you know, it took me a while to get past that, but what I've learned through all the years at work and having to give countless numbers of presentations is that, like anything else, it's a skill. It's a skill that you can learn, and with practice you can improve. Next slide, please. So I think the first thing that we have to do is really change our story around public speaking. I love this quote by Emerson. It says, all the great speakers were bad speakers at first. And if we trust that, then we know that there's opportunity and hope for all of us. Okay, so what I did was I came up with a framework that worked for me. I've split this up into 3 different sections. It goes from prepare, practice, perform. And to me, the prepare part is the most important, because I think when you're prepared, you become more confident. So the first thing that we think about is, who's our audience? So are you presenting this talk to fellow students? Is it to your professors? Is it to the administration? In my case, it would be, am I having this conversation with my team? Am I presenting something new to my boss? Am I presenting what my business is to my board of directors? Depending on who that audience is, the mix of the information that I'm going to share and also the tone and the level of detail will be different. So for example, the board of directors doesn't really care how I'm going to get to what I'm going to tell them. They're looking for big picture ideas. What's the innovation? What are you presenting to us? So it's about big numbers, and it's quick because they've got very limited time, very busy. If I was given the same presentation to my peer group, they'd be interested in the how, because we're all dealing with the same things and understanding, okay, what are the constraints and how are we going to get there? So really thinking through that part is very important. And for you guys as well, I'm sure, you know, if you are giving a presentation in front of your peers, there's probably going to be more level of detail than it would if you were going higher up. A lot of times what people will do is they'll put in as many facts and figures as they can in there. Because they want to show that they've done the work and that they understand the topic, etc. And it's really about figuring out how to get the nuggets out of there that really are the most impactful pieces. So clarifying your message is really important. So is there a call to action? What's the perspective that you're giving? And what is the value add? The last piece of this, I think, in any good presentation is you want to be able to tell a story. All of you are the audience. You know this. You know, you have certain classes that you enjoy more than others. Sometimes it's the topic, sometimes it's the delivery of the professor and how engaging they are. And are they telling you a story through this? So thinking through some of those parts, I think, will really help you get your thoughts down on paper. The next piece is practice. So for me, it's really helped. Jonathan, next slide, please. So when you go through once you have your thoughts on paper, you have to write it down. And I write it out exactly the way that I'm going to say it, because it really helps me structure the talk, helps me make sure that I have the most important parts, helps me make sure that I have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and really helps me with the flow. So I think this is the part where it's really important to just think through how you want it. And you're going to go through plenty of times editing it. And I think it's very helpful to do that. And then I spend a lot of time reading it out loud. And when I say read it out loud, I read it out loud verbatim. And I start with, hi, my name is Susan M. You know, and the first time I did that, I was like, oh, this is ridiculous. But it really does get you a little bit more familiar with the talk and gets you comfortable. I used to read through the presentations as I was walking, because for me, when I'm walking, it tends to stick in my head a little bit more. But I also do practice in front of the mirror. And especially now in this time of Zoom, I'll record myself on Zoom just so I can kind of see how I'm presenting. I can figure out my vocal range. At what point does it make sense for me to go a little bit higher, a little bit lower? Again, that goes back to engagement. We want to make sure that we are accentuating the important parts of the conversation. We're leaving space for pauses and all of that. And then also think about this as a dress rehearsal. So what are you going to wear for the event? And maybe a couple of times you'll do your presentation wearing the outfit that you're going to wear. Anything that gets you more familiar and more comfortable will help you be more confident when the time comes. And then the next part of practice is just say yes. There was a point where I knew that I was struggling with my first couple of presentations, and I said, you know what? Anytime there was an opportunity for me to give a presentation, whether it was in front of college students, whether it was in front of other business functions, if it was a lunch and learn, if it was a breakfast with the boss, I said yes to all of those things, because I knew that the more I got myself out there, the more I would get familiar and more comfortable with public speaking. So I encourage you to do that. In some cases, sometimes I'll practice my talks in front of my children or with my husband, and they'll give me pointers about what things maybe made sense or it didn't flow. So sometimes doing that and being able to get feedback from someone that you trust can be very helpful. So now you've prepared, so you know who your audience is, you've clarified your message, you know how to engage it in a story. You're going to write it out loud. You're going to read it out loud. You're going to say yes to every opportunity. And then now it's showtime. So the most important parts of showtime is really reframing the experience. So first of all, you know, thinking of it as a conversation. I mentioned earlier, I have a teenage daughter. She happens to be a sophomore in college. And I asked her, I said, what's the best piece of advice that you'd be able to give when it comes to public speaking? And she said, well, just think of it as a conversation. And I think that's right, because as much as there's multiple people in the room or in the Zoom screen, you can really connect with one person and act like you're having the conversation with them. So that's number one. Number two, I would say that really, you know, we have nerves, right? I mean, I could do this 50 times and the 50th time I'm still going to be nervous. That's just, it's natural, and all the professionals will tell you that as well. But I try to reframe that as excitement, because at that point, I've prepared, I've practiced, I'm ready to go, and I've got something to share. And I know that you guys are here as an audience for me, so that gets me excited. So it's about trying to reframe your state of mind so that it walks away from being scary to something that's a little bit more exciting. And then exhale. A lot of times I happen to be a fast talker. So anytime I'm nervous, I'm just going to talk faster. And I'm sure a lot of you do that as well. So sometimes in the beginning of my talks, I'll make sure that I do some deep breathing, and it's simple. I'm going to ask you all to do it with me because it's so impactful and I want you to believe me. So just deep breath in, deep breath out. We're going to do it again. Deep breath in, deep breath out. And already you should start feeling your heartbeat slowing down a bit. And it really helps you calm your body as well as your mind and puts you in a state where you're going to be a little more relaxed going into the presentation. And then the last part of it is smile. You know, smiling, we know, engages people, right? So you put a smile out there, someone else is going to smile back at you. You've got some positive energy going back and forth. But also it's been proven that when you smile, it relaxes you. So again, it's going to help you to be more comfortable when you're doing your presentation. And what I always try to do is find one or two people in the audience. And if I see them looking at me with a warm smile, they're the ones I'm going to latch onto. And I'm going to make eye contact with them because I know that they're fans of mine. and that they want me to do well. And I have to say, in all the years that I've done presentations in corporate America, for the most part, they all want you to do well. They're there because they want to hear what you have to say. So sometimes you walk into it thinking, oh my God, that's going to be a problem, but it's really not. They're really there to help you and just to be able to learn from you. So thinking of them as your allies, I think, is also very important. So that's really my 3-step framework. And I think we can go into it a little bit more in depth as we go into our workshop. But I wanted to leave you with this one last quote. So Jonathan, next slide, please. So first of all, we all know it, right? Just do it, as Nike says. But Dale Carnegie, who's synonymous with public speaking, says, inaction breeds doubt and fear. And I think that really is true. It's really about being able to do it, even though you're afraid. And every time that you do it, you're going to gain confidence and you're going to get better and better. I won't promise you that your first or second talks will be great. They probably will suck, and that's fine. But by the time you get to your 5th or 6th, you'll see an improvement and you'll continue to get better at it. And the more comfortable you are, the more comfortable the audience is as well. Okay, and I think that's it, right, Jonathan? Thank you. Okay, so I wanted to open that up for questions because I know, first of all, I would like to see this as a mentoring session. And like I said, I've got over 25 years experience in the workplace. I know that some of you have experience, some of you may not. I do think that the transition between school and work is a very big one, just again, because I think the rules of engagement in the workforce isn't as clear and as clear cut. And it's not the same across organizations. So that's something that I'm happy to be able to share some information about. And then I also hope that a lot of you will be brave enough to present so that we can give feedback in real time. Okay, first victim. I need a victim. Does anybody have any questions or any feedback based on what I talked through?
Yeah, so there was a few questions that were submitted before the event, and I wanted to go over them, see if you can speak on them.
Okay.
Let me just pull up those questions. So I'm just going to go through them all, and then you can pick which ones you want to talk about first or what you think are most relevant here. But of course, the first one is if you have any tips, what your top tips are, per se, on public speaking, what your top tips would be. And I know you did just go over them. That was the first question. The second one was how to effectively engage an audience without becoming distracted from your message. The third one is working on presentation skills. That's a bit vague, so you can take it in any direction. And
yeah.
Then is when you're speaking, how to not get nervous.
Yeah, well, okay. So I would say going through the speaking part. So, I think everybody can do different things to quiet their nerves. But like I said, for me, the deep breathing part has been really life-changing. I took up meditation probably, I don't know, 7 years ago. And I was always one of those people, I'm a New Yorker, I go really fast, I'm impatient. And the first couple of times I tried meditation, I said, this is not for me, it is not working. But once you get into it, and it's really about the breathing exercises, and that really does help, there could be a point, in the beginning when I used to do my presentations, I could hear my heart and I could also hear my voice quiver. Although people would always tell you, you know what, you sounded great. And you're like, really? Because I heard all of that and I felt that. So sometimes it's really, you're more critical about yourself and you think that other people notice some of these things and they really don't. So it's really about figuring out what are some of those things that will help calm you down, because I think that's really what it is. It's fight or flight. You're scared to death. So, your body is just sort of, responding and doing its thing. So figuring out what, is it breathing exercises? Is it taking a drink of water? Is it just closing your eyes and meditating for 5 seconds about, being someplace else? It's kind of figuring out some sort of mental help, that's going to help you navigate that. But like I said, I suggest breathing. What were some of the other ones, Jonathan?
Okay, some of the other ones, let me go back up. What do we have here? techniques to keeping people engaged?
Yeah. Well, my technique has always been to use humor. And of course, you know, that sometimes is controversial, right? Because some audiences, and again, it starts with that. You got to be able to read the audience. So depending on what kind of room, you know, I'm a part of, I usually I would say for me, mostly 90% of the time, humor works. So whether it's, you know, some making fun of myself, or, you know, making just a silly joke about something, or just anything like that's an icebreaker, usually will get people to warm up to you. But it's really about engaging them in stories. So for example, I think that there's a lot of times where, you know, I've had people on my team, my associates, would report their business results to me. And, you know, they're young. They're not so well versed in the business. So a lot of times what they'll do is they'll take some of the reporting and some of the statistics and just basically rattle them off to me, as opposed to being able to put it in some context so that they can tell me a story about their business. So for example, someone can say to me, you know what, you know, Inc. business last week was down 30% to plan, down 20% to last year. Dress shoes was, you know, down 16, and boots was down 12. And I'll say, okay, well, what does that tell me? Where, you know, a different way to be able to spin something like that is to say, you know what, the Inc. business was a little soft last week, but we were right in line with our competitors. It looks like the overall category of dress shoes was down, and the category was down 50%. We only dropped 16%. So just by being able to put some of those buckets in context, it tells me a story about the business, and it lets me know that you understand what you're talking about. So that's really important.
Susan, I see a really good question on the chat here, and I want to also acknowledge one of our faculty members who's on Zoom too, Professor Houlihan. So welcome. I see a really good question here from Jason, and he talks about Zoom. Are there challenges to talking and presenting on Zoom versus just regular public speaking presentations?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think in one way it's less scary, because, you know, everyone's in small boxes. It's a little controlled in that way. But at the same time, I think that when you're in a real life setting and you have the audience in front of you, sometimes that energy helps you. And that helps you be a little bit more engaging. You can be a little bit more, you know, I'm doing with my hands. It looks crazy on Zoom, but in person, if I was standing up, it would look deliberate, like it was part of my talk. It's how I'm conveying some information to you. So I think that there are things that get lost in Zoom, but at the same time, I do think it makes it a little bit safer and a little bit less scary.
So I